Hello, ladies, and welcome. I am so honored that you came to listen, and I hope you get a few things done today during the broadcast. I have been very busy procrastinating and finally had to go back to my list, which is a brilliant idea. If you don't have a list, start out by writing prep on it, meaning I'm going to bathe, get dressed, do my hair, try to look like I'm happy with life at home. And that is just such a start. And if you'll stick to your list, if you'll look at it like it's your taskmaster, your boss, your unforgiving schedule that if you don't keep it, you'll go wrong somewhere. This is such a beautiful idea. It's just done on a little piece of paper, but it also prevents some of the things that I will be talking about later on in the people part of this video on how sometimes the homemaker they're tender-hearted, they're generous, and they want to help people, and how they can get in distraction and not get their house in the pleasing manner that they want it to be because they're fragmented out trying to please other people or do things for other people or make commitments. And so today I hope to cover a little bit of that. I'm not all that wise about it because I've gone down that rabbit hole many times. And I just was thinking about it the other day, just trying to analyze, okay, at what point does it happen that I get away from this beautiful list that had good intentions, and my heart is in it, my soul is in it. I'm just writing down how I want the day to go and what I want to do in the home to make it a place that I want to be in. And when I was a lot younger, I thought everywhere else was better than my home. But I learned that no matter what kind of home I had, if it wasn't quite well repaired or modern enough, I could still beautify it and I could still make it lovely and comfortable. And I'll never forget the day my friend invited me to her upper room, which was an apartment above their shop or gas station. I can't remember which it was. And it was so warm and comfortable. And she made homemade pizza for us. And it was just a wonderful time. We really enjoyed it. And she had made that little place so nice. I still wish she had it because I'd like to go up and see it again. But of course, her family got bigger and they ended up moving on to something more adequate. But it made me think that I could probably manage okay and if I made it beautiful wherever it was. So today, I'm sitting here in the manse and looking at my list, and I hope that you'll just take a little time right now while you're listening to me and sit down and write down prep and then a list, and it would be your general homemaking afterwards and things that you do for other people that might be more personal, like your sewing or your correspondence. And I really realized I had a problem with procrastination when I had on my list the same thing over and over, and I didn't do it for weeks and weeks. And then I got to wondering about these. I've told you about how exercise can help so many things, and now you can find a stretch or a pose for anything that bothers you. For example, you can start with a headache. Stretches and poses for headaches. And some kind of instruction will come up where you can follow the instructions. It'll tell you how to sit or stand and where to put your hands or something like that. It's very easy, only a minute or two. And then you can go on down to sinus. There's an exercise or a stretch or a pose for sinus. There are for breathing and shoulder aches, stomach aches, even constipation. There are exercises and stretches and poses for all these things. Joint pain and procrastination, yes, and anxiety. It's just anything that you can that you have that's a malady, even poor skin or thin hair or anything like that. You can look up poses, stretches, exercise for and name it. Or maybe you're having problem with coughing, or you can't sleep at night. You can find these beautiful poses and exercises and stretches for every little thing. And they're just a minute or two. And you'll look at it, or I will anyway, and say, are you kidding me? That little exercise for 2 minutes is not going to help me. And one time I was suffering a lot from an inability to sleep. And so I looked up, are there poses, exercises, and stretches for sleep? And sure enough, there were a couple, and I tried one, and I thought, that's not going to help me because I'm an expert at insomnia. And before I knew it, I had woken up and I had slept the deepest, most beautiful sleep I had for a long time. So just look up some of these things, do your own research, and try them. And it's much like little children. I have a little grandson, and he wants to lead me through exercises, and he'll do something that's so similar to some of these stretches and poses, like clasp his hands over his head and rest his foot on his ankle or his knee, and he'll say, Mima, just stand here and do this. And they're so natural to children, and I think, well, he's in such good shape, maybe I should just do what he does. And that's all these are. And it's another thing too is this list will keep other people from imposing on you. If they know you have a list and that you have some kind of order in your life, at least in your mind and on your list, they are less likely to disrespect you. And in fact, you can make people really nervous who are trying to control you, trying to get you to do something that's off the list that doesn't help your home life or complete the commandments in Titus 2 to guide and guard the home. Something that's completely off, like I want you to make a couple of sales calls for me. And we're going to talk about that. Or I'd like you to go and deliver this tool to my friend so-and-so. What you do is you get out this list. This list makes people nervous when they're trying to push you around. You get this list out. Or maybe you have a critic around, and the critic is saying, the bathroom needs to be cleaned. And you'll say, well, that's going to occur around 3 o'clock because I have all these other things first. This makes them really nervous. They don't like it that you really are trying to be orderly in what you do. And there are some people that want to make you fail. I'm sorry to say, there are some people that just want us as homemakers to do the worst job and to fail so that they can say that what we're doing has no good results, no good intentions. And that's one of the reasons I tell you to get dressed up and get a list, because it does bring across more of an impression. You're communicating with someone that your intentions, and you're communicating with someone that you're approaching this in a more professional way. So just this little list, and an apron helps too. If I'd thought to bring one here to this video, I would have put on the pink one that matches this. And just this idea that this is a wonderful, fulfilling job. It's much like or better than working in a very high-end hotel where you care about what it's like when you come in the front door. There's a bouquet of flowers that's the first thing you see on a little table, and where you care about how shiny the floors are. And I remember back in the 1950s when the feminists began to complain and say, is that all women should care about, whether their floors are shiny or not? Well, we did care, and our mothers cared, and our grandmothers cared. They thought shiny floors were nice, and they wanted to keep them clean, but it was kind of diminished until we thought to mention it would sound like we were brainless, because we wanted shiny floors and shiny faucets and that sort of thing. But when you go to a high-end hotel to stay, do you really want the place to look like it hasn't been cared for, and the floors aren't clean, and the faucets aren't shiny? And so think about that, on how intimidated homemakers have been over the years over things like that. And so this list will help us to give it that feeling that we want. And I think it's really important also to, on the other side of the list, to make a kind of a summary of what you would like for your home to make you happy, to be comfortable at home? What would it take for you not to want to leave your home, and to stay in it a long time, and to make it homey, and concentrate on it, and yet still enjoy it? One of the problems we have is that we work in the place that we also relax. We work in the place that we also sleep, and we work in the place where we also do things for other people, entertain them, and show hospitality. And so it's very hard, and that's why I really liked Helen Andolin's books, The Fascinating Girl and Fascinating Womanhood. She had a paragraph in the homemaking part called Learn to Relax at Home. Just those 3 or 4 little words helped me so much from the time I was in my 20s till now that I'm vital. Learn to relax at home. That idea of having a vacation spirit in the home was so good for me, because I didn't have to get intensely involved and act like a martyr when I was cleaning a floor or a batch of dishes, and feeling that I was being imposed on or made into just a workhorse. I started to look at it as a kind of a holiday. Put some music on, dress up, and thankfully we've got our texts and our cell phones now, so we can have company, or we can listen to something. And I love audiobooks, especially the nice ones, nice clean audiobooks, and just the treat of feeling like I'm on holiday. And I knew a young girl before she was married. She said to me once, she was a friend of the family's. We knew her parents and grandparents, and she told me once that one of the things she did when she was a homeschool girl at home was when it was her turn to take over one part of the house, that she would pretend she would go to the door and knock and come in and act like she had been hired to go and do a job. And she said she had so much fun with that, almost making up a kind of a character story for herself while she was doing it. And she said she looked at it with different eyes. When we go to help somebody that's had a baby or been sick, and we clean their house, somehow it's not as big of a burden as when we're doing our own. It's more fun to take care of somebody else's mess. We're not as pulled down by it. But when you have an attitude like that of more adventure, like my stealth sipping and all the other things that I invent, like my fog fashions and things that would be maybe ordinary and dreary to somebody, how to change that. You can only do that as a homemaker and in the home, or as someone who has their business at home. Because when you work outside the home for someone else, you're on their time, their schedule, and you are going to follow their agenda, because you are not your own. And so this is so important at home, to show that verve and that happiness, if not humor, in life and the life at home. And these lists are so important. Even if you don't get any of it done, at least have it, and you'll look like you're not wandering around wondering what to do. And there are a lot of people don't have any confidence in the women at home, and they'll be watching, whether it's a husband that's doubting, or some other person in your life. They'll be watching, but you have got to have. And I saw a woman once who was having problems with that, and she said, I'm going to fix them. And she got herself a great big notebook with the big rings in it and everything, and she'd be flipping pages and writing everything down. And she had little pockets for her receipts, and she had a place for her list, and she could tear it off. And so that family that she married into knew that she meant business, and they tried to intimidate her. And it's in anything that you do, and you might think, I don't want to be a homemaker because they're just going to attack me. But you have to approach it with this beauty and confidence and love and care and concern for your family. We're just making the world a better place for them. And also, I think it's really important that while we teach people respect for the home, and for us, that we're not doing it just for that, because it is possible. You may never, ever get any kind of reward or acknowledgement for it, but you do it for your own satisfaction and for the Lord and for your people. I heard about a funeral recently, and it was a man who had given his life to a little tiny congregation out in the country, and he had just been there all of his life, raised his kids there, lived to be in his 90s. And during the funeral, which was somewhere else and not at this little place, nothing was said about that dedication that he had given to this little tiny congregation. He had helped them all so much, been so faithful to teach and to also counsel people and encourage them to study the Bible. And he was always available, always there, had great wisdom. Nothing was said about the time and the lifetime he spent raising his family there. And so you may not get any acclaim for what you do, but if you keep these lists, it's kind of like a record. You can have a little notebook with these lists in, and with the little check marks that you do. Sometimes I'll feel a little bit overwhelmed. But if I'll start with something small here, one of these things that says fixed door handle. So I decided I would just go do that first, because then I could exit off of my list. And as I saw those little check marks, I became more encouraged. And so this also is a list that will help you not to be discouraged, because you can check something off. And some of the jobs that you give yourself might not be interesting. There are a lot of things I write on here that just don't interest me at all, but they must be done. And if I'll decide to go ahead and make myself do it, and it's called self-control or self-motivation. The Bible teaches it, that one of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control. So the way to create self-control is to find something on the list you don't want to do and force yourself to do it. And that's why I say, we make it as pleasant as possible in the home to get things done. And like I said, I listen to a book, or I'll get my daughter on the phone, and she'll be doing some drudge work at the same time, and she'll say, "Oh, thanks, Mom, I got all this done while I was talking to you," and then I got things that I wanted to do done. And so these notebooks or these lists, I just wanted to emphasize how important they are. If you could I can never get in the habit, but if you could get in the habit of doing a very neat and tidy job, decorating your page, put a few stickers on it, and save them, they might be useful to you or to your descendants later on. I always throw mine away, because who would want to look at this? And so I want to start out with the, just your whole attitude, to renew your mind and get your whole attitude going. That's why I say your appearance, because it is something you can change instantly without feeling. Maybe you don't feel like having a good attitude about your home, but once you change your clothes, it can help, because it's a start. It's something you can change without, you might look at a room or a pile of dishes and just suddenly feel terrible about it. But if you'll get dressed and get ready and act somewhat professional and put on something to listen to. I know back in the olden days, women would sometimes light a little scented candle. I don't do that anymore, because I like the non-flammable stuff. And as I get more vital, I want to be careful. And so today, I do have a number of things to read to you and to talk to you about. And I want to get into good manners and etiquette. And I had told you about this book, Simple Social Graces, by Linda S. Lichter. And every now and then I'll read a little bit about it, because she went into the Victorian era and went through their letters and diaries and the publications that they had made, and what women's life were like. She looked at their clothing, she looked at their needleworks and crafts, she looked at their art, she looked at their children, how their children were raised, and the education of their children. She looked into what their family celebrations were like, and she got all this information, even what the toys were that the children played with, and she did a wonderful research job. And so she called, I wanted to show you a picture here. I'll try to remember to put that on the blog. So if you're new here, please click the link in the description and go to the blog where I am posting this video. Now, we are having trouble with notification on your email when I update my blog. There was a change in Blogger, and they no longer use this service. And so what I suggest you do now, till I can get that straightened out, is go to YouTube, type in my name, Lydia Sherman. Isn't that brilliant? It's so creative. And my blog channel will come up, and you can subscribe there and ring the bell. And that way, I don't know how they notify you. Maybe they notify your email, or maybe you just have to go to YouTube and see when it comes up. And or there's a little place on the side that will say my channels or something like that. And that way you'll know, because when I update on the channel, it's automatically going to be updated over on the blog, because that's what I'm making them for, is for the blog. It will be on the blog. So this picture is the Multimedia Center of the Victorian life. Now, every one of you, I don't care how you hate the Victorian era, you're related to those people. They were your great-great-great-grandparents. And I don't know how people can send such hate towards that era. They will blame women's clothing, or they'll say women weren't free or something like that. And they just hate. And yet, do you hate your great-grandmother or your ancestors? Do you hate them? Every one of us is from them. We're all related to them. But here's a picture of a family around a dining room. This is so clever. In the Victorian home, the dining room, not the multimedia center, was the central focus. Well, the dining room was your multimedia center. That's where you came together. But it always confused me, even as a young child, because I had a very strict father, and he was from not from a career in the military, but he'd been in the military, and he was very autocratic, and he insisted that we not talk at the dining table. But we were a large family, 7 children. I'm the oldest of 7, and so there were 9 of us there, and he wouldn't let us talk, but that would be the time we'd want to talk the most. But I wonder why God chose the mouth to be a place where you put your food, and also a place where you talk. We weren't allowed to talk with our mouth full, and we weren't allowed to eat if we were talking. And those two just didn't mix well, so I always wondered about that, unless there's some other reason for it. There's no other part of our body that does two contradictory things. And our ears are just for hearing, and our eyes are just for seeing. But the mouth is very interesting, because we were not allowed to speak with food in our mouth. And indeed, our father did not like us to speak at all while eating, because I guess he knew that this would be a rather insurmountable task with so many of us at the table. But for some reason, eating always made us want to talk. It made us sociable. So it said, the formality of the room echoed the formality of the family ritual of dining together. In this picture from 1897, a family is gathered for a birthday party. Well, she says the formality of the room. There's a chandelier, there's a tablecloth, there's chairs that look like they are carved chairs. Everyone is dressed up to the hilt. All the men in collars and ties, and the women in the beautiful dresses. Even the young boys are wearing suits. And then the dining room is very, very formal looking. It has a sideboard, it has a china hutch, it has paintings on the wall, And she says, the formality of the family ritual of dining together. And it says, the formality of the room echoed the formality of the family ritual. Isn't that nice? And I always wanted a house that had a dining room in it. I just thought it was so beautiful to have a dining table that was different and not in the kitchen. And so everywhere I have lived, I have tried to make a separate area for dining that was more formal because it felt so elegant. I'm not sure I succeeded at all in it, but while I'm reading Linda Lichter, I want to read part of a chapter here that this goes along with home living and making your home the way that you want to be, because manners is involved in it, and the homemaker has to be undisturbed. She has to have a sense of well-being. She has to have peace of mind. And people can really ruffle her up because she'll get focused on something and somebody will say something really negative and then she'll cry and not want to do it anymore. But what I would say the solution is to keep working at home, keep making it a better place, keep on arranging things and keep on setting that if you set the table, keep on doing that stuff because it balances your mind and gives you some kind of formality. As a matter of fact, this list that I was telling you about that we make for ourselves, they give us a grounding because, okay, now I have a map. Now I have a program that I can follow. And it's mine. I have decided what will make the house the most conducive to happiness and to live in. And so the woman at home has to be undisturbed in order to do a good job. But unfortunately, you are going to run into critics or people who will try to thwart everything that you do. So that's where this manners comes in. And so the name of this chapter from her book, Simple Social Graces, is called A Sensibility That Makes Sense. How clever. And you know how I love Jane Austen. So, here it is. This is interesting because I remember back in the 50s when the manners and the importance of the home started to erode, started to go downhill to where before that, you might find a diner every now and then that was a little more informal than, let's say, eating at a hotel. But then after that became the fast food and came the less formal areas of life, and things became a lot more commercial. There'd be less people being invited to each other's homes, and there was the big hotel chains, and so you didn't depend on going to stay with someone else because you could always go to a hotel. And so we got away from dealing with people. We dealt with business, and even in business, there's a formality there. The customer has to be polite, or there used to be, how you would give a review of maybe a hotel that you liked or a food place that you ate, and you might say something about it in good, what you thought was good about it. Well, at the same time, the customers were being evaluated too by these businesses, and they had the right to refuse business to anyone that disturbed the business or disturbed the place or in some way was just not very desirable. And so the customer also had to behave themselves, not only the proprietors, but the customers too. And so it was a lot different. And so here's what I want to read to you about her A Sensibility That Makes Sense. And that was, the Victorians were proud, not ashamed of being refined. Now that's interesting. This word refined always comes up, and if you remember in the Old Testament, it was talking about the Messiah. It says he is a refiner's fire. And if you look up refinement or refiner's fire, it just means that when you heat something and the impurities come to the top, and you can discard them, and it's to purify something. So this refinement word has been coming up a lot lately as I discuss various issues with friends and family. And so today I have a little bit of a script to talk to you about because they've given me so many ideas. And so I'll just read what it says here. The Victorians were proud, not ashamed of being refined. Well, I can remember being somewhat sensible of refinement and being careful. And then towards the 60s, somebody would say something like, "Why are you so formal? Why are you wearing that? Why do you drink a tea out of a teacup? Why do you this and why do you do that?" That's, what was it someone said? That's a way of life that's gone. And so they made people ashamed of being too formal. So as a result, many people my age, yes, even those in their vital years can remember this, started dressing more informally because of the backlash against it. We stopped wearing hats and gloves, and we stopped wearing pretty dresses, even for every day, just the formal things that we used to enjoy back in the day. And because there was such a negative response to it. Not only that, there was an attack on it. Why are you so formal? And I was shocked that back in the 70s, people stopped eating around a table together and wanted to sit in a room on a couch and watch a game or something instead. And that's fine, I think, for just when the family's home. But I didn't expect it, I didn't know that it had changed. And I don't know who changes these things and how they spread it around or how they announced that it was changed. But it changed pretty fast. And now many dining rooms, in fact, some houses that are being built don't include one because they imagine that people aren't going to be using them. And so let me continue here, kids. I hope you're having a good time and you're getting something done while you listen. Now remember not to take everything I say so seriously. Before you check to see if this really works for your family and for yourself, I am just talking to you as I go and dispensing some of my books and knowledge that I have and sharing it with you, maybe to make you feel a little enlivened about your own home, about living at home. They were proud, not ashamed of being refined. To us, the blood and guts of savagery may be real, but so are the deadly diseases we try to cure. You don't have to be a pinky-crooking tea drinker to see why we need a little less reality and a little more refinement for both civility and survival. I watched a really good video, can't even think of where it is now, and I wouldn't know how to find it. But this young woman was so good about talking about having a proper tea and how to drink a cup of tea. And she demolished that silly idea that, you put your pinky in the air. She says that was just done to discredit it and to demean it. Nobody did that. That's never done. And I've had people over and told them we're going to have tea, and they say, maybe I could just put my pinky in the air. And they mock it. They don't realize just how demeaning that is and how silly it is, because this lady on this one video that was talking about proper tea drinking and how to use your spoon and where to rest your spoon when you're finished with it, just real detailed things about the teacup and tea drinking, said you never say that. And they never said it in those days either. It was just something, and you never did it. And it was something to demean the whole thing and make fun of it. And little by little, those little remarks have broken down some of the sweetness and the desirable formality that even children love about dining. And it's no longer dining, it's just eating. It's not the same thing. And so I can remember back probably as late as the 70s, putting on a little dinner for another couple and had a tablecloth on there. And one of the men said, "Oh, we're using tablecloths now, are we?" And just, I think a lot of it was from eating out so much, and they had stopped using formal things. They stopped using tablecloths, and so it was such a shock. And then, so it can be daunting when you see the world changing around you and trying to make you feel uncomfortable with the life you used to have. But I think we can hang on to some of the good things. So she says, the little courtesies, the minor morals, were anything but minor. The power of manners is incessant. In the beginning of civility, to make us, endurable to each other. To make us endurable to each other. So if you're teaching your children, you're just making each other amiable and endurable to each other. The way that you sit at the table, where you put your arms, whether you're bothering somebody else, whether you're eating in a gross manner that makes people sick, you teach your children to make life endurable and amiable for other people. Make them comfortable. To get people out of the quadrupled state, to get them washed clothes and set up on end. And that's from an old book, a saying. Good manners are made up of little things that taken separately seem very insignificant, but put together make up a very large whole. Yes, it might seem very simplistic to ask your children to put their napkin on their lap, or to put the hand they're not using on their lap when they're eating. It might just seem silly, but it makes up the whole comfortableness of, if that's a word, of dining together. But even if they aren't dining with anyone, I think that good manners are very important, just to give you self-dignity. The exhaustively intensive system of Victorian major and minor morals, which made life not just endurable but enjoyable, is legendary. From the prescribed way for a lady to treat a shop clerk to the equestrian rules of the road, all the rules of etiquette shared a logical thread: protection of the weak from the physical and verbal exploitation. The rules of the Victorian road may seem overly detailed to us, but the powerful social stigma of breaking such rules served as an effective deterrent to antisocial behavior. With so many do's and don'ts, 19th century Americans knew what to expect in social situations and didn't have to invent etiquette on the spot. But if you ever do have to invent etiquette on the spot, just remember, it's whatever's the kindest thing to do, and don't get that twisted and saying, it's really kind to punish somebody. Somebody can always twist it that way, because in the end, it'll be a kindness. I'm talking about temporary things, and we're not here to teach people complete life lessons if we're just wanting to be kind and polite. And so the best thing to do when you don't know what to do is to do whatever is the most courteous. Whatever you can think of is the most courteous and non-offensive. To navigate the complex terrain of Victorian manners required a detailed map as well as a compass. As Eliza Duffy noted in 1877, she has all the details in the back of these people. There's a little asterisk by their name, and you can go back and look up her references as to who wrote what book and which author this was. She says, good sense and good nature suggest civility in general, but there are 1,000 little delicacies which are established only by custom. But it was precisely these fine points of politeness, the forms, the ceremonies, and the rules that we have abandoned, which establish and enforce the regulation of the manners of men and women in their interaction with each other. To the Victorians, all this was deadly serious business. For examples, ladies would grow apocalyptic at the no-show guests we routinely endure with a frustrated shrug. They would say they won't be invited back. We would just shrug, oh, well, that's the way people are. In 1890, Ward McAllister wrote, like I said, she's got all the names back here in the books that they wrote, the references. A dinner invitation once accepted is a sacred obligation. If you die before the dinner takes place, your executor must attend. He may have been joking, but only by half. And of course, we have a courtesy crisis today. And I'll just give you a little example of something that I think it must have been maybe 30 years ago. I don't know, maybe, 30 years ago I would suggest that it is. I might not be quite accurate. But being a homeschooler and a homemaker and everything, I was very careful to see that good manners and good sense was embedded in my children, and we all learned together because I was learning too. It was a chance for me to be educated too because I wasn't homeschooled, and a lot of bad manners were acquired in public school behind the teachers' backs because we were intermingling with a lot of other unwise students our own age, and so there was a church, and that wasn't the one that we belonged to, but it was a larger one, and they had invited our young people to go and have a dinner for young people at one of the members' houses. And so our older children went, and the dinner kept, it was after dinner, it was lasting a long time, and they were going to do some other activities, and pretty soon, the night just wore on, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the morning. And while our children came home, some of the other parents were saying our children didn't come home until the next morning. And so they were calling the lady and the husband that had hosted it and asked her why, what happened, that the kids weren't home. And she said, "Oh, you misunderstand. Nothing was wrong. They thought it was very inappropriate, that all those older children were staying together in this house all night, even if they were just, doing activities." She said what happened was they were all watching a movie, and then they just fell asleep all over on the couches and chairs and everything. So we just let them stay the night. We got some blankets out, and some of them laid on the floor and everything. So these parents were very upset, and they were kind of pressing this woman and her husband as to why they let this happen. And they say, "Oh, it's not what you think. It's they're all just friends, And so after that experience and hearing that, every time someone says, "Oh, you misunderstood," I know I'm being gaslighted. Because if you have to do something and other people are, quote, misunderstanding it, then you're not on the up and up, because the Bible says that we should abstain from every appearance of misconduct, every appearance of evil, it says. And so if you have to say something like, "Oh, you misunderstood," if things are right, they look right. Things have to look right in order to be right. And I understand how we might misjudge someone. There's always, some bizarre exception to everything. But this is where manners comes in, is that first of all, the family should have all been informed what would likely happen during the evening, what kind of evening it would be, what time it would all end, and not to be alarmed if your children are up late or something like that. But, somebody should have been told, and nobody was. And so this is why these parents were upset. And so it's just these little things it's a lack of courtesy. And, of course, there's a lot of cover-up there, too, trying to excuse these slips of courtesy, trying to excuse them. And while we're talking about this, I want to get into salesmanship because I've been talking with a lot of people about this, and so someone had told me something very interesting. Let me see if I can find it here. And she said one of the tactics of, what was it she said? One of the tactics of getting yourself devolved from things you really would rather do, things that you'd like to do, and getting involved in other things, social things, whatever, is the sudden decision thing. And I had it written down here, so I'm in vain looking for it. She said, the idea of getting caught suddenly to make a sudden decision about something, and that is a trap that someone will say, would you like to come over tonight? We're having a little thing tonight, and you're just like stop and you can't think. And that is easy to say, okay, well, I had to make a sudden decision. And homemakers can get caught up in this because people think that they're just free to do what they want, that they don't have to get up early and they don't have to go to work. So, well, they're good for coming to some of our things, some of our agenda. Maybe we're in sales or something like that. And so we ask them, but anything that has to be decided on the spur of the moment or suddenly just should be put off. It should be a no because it's too soon. And the sales thing that's going on is a lot of young women are in it too, and that is, I haven't seen you in a while. I'd like to come over. I'm free on such and such a date. And so you're standing there thinking, oh, yeah, let me see. Am I free on that day? Yeah, we could get together. Instead of thinking, should we get together? Can I spare that day? Can I spare that time? And that's where these wonderful lists come in, because you should have more than just your daily list. You should have it by the week, things that you'd like to accomplish during the week. And if they do come, and I do put on some kind of hospitality for them, is that going to interfere in the things that I would like to do? But the sales thing that goes on is very clever, and we're still falling for it. And that is, you have some really good ideas. I'd like to talk to you about them sometime. Would Tuesday or Wednesday be all right? And you don't think, you're busy thinking, I've got to answer that question. Which one would be all right, Tuesday or Wednesday? And you're not answering the question that should have been asked, is can you spare the time to do it? And should you be doing it? And are you interested in doing it? And because sometimes other people's ideas get pressured on us. Here was the quote that this woman told me. Pressure and haste are tools to make you do something without thinking. Pressure and haste. And making decisions in pressure and haste. Making you think that you're going to miss out on your best chance. But I will tell you something. If you as a homemaker don't have control of your house and you don't feel comfortable doing something and you feel this pressure and haste thing, then all you have to do is say to yourself, if I'm going to miss out on something, God's going to provide it for me some other time and some other way. That is so good. It was just like, this is how they used to do the sales. If you don't come in and get this on Wednesday when there's a sale for half price, it'll all be gone and you won't get it for half price anymore if it ever comes back. I used to console myself and I would say, if God wants me to have it, if I still want to have it, and I miss out on it, God will provide it in some way. So pressure and haste are the tactics of people who are trying to manipulate you. So the homemaker has to be very careful about this because her time is her life and her family is her life. And how many times do you think the homemaker has been called away from her home because someone wanted her to do something for them? Or especially the Christian women, they're tender-hearted and they want to help someone, and they're so dedicated to that, they'll neglect their own homes and their own health and their own families to go and help someone else. And We have to be very, very careful to guard our time together as a family. Those of you who are vital know how fast that went. How did it go so fast? You had your babies, they grew up and got married and started their own homes. How'd that happen so fast? It just went too fast. And so every moment that you spend away from them, some people will regret it. Other people, not so much. But I think for myself, no, even having to go to the grocery store and leave the children with their father, that's okay, but I regret it because I could have been with them. And so there's just so much, that we miss out on. And so do what you need to do to make your house good for you, and don't pay attention too much to the pressure. So today I'm talking about pressure and haste as tactics, as other people pressure you, and you might not understand why I'm doing this, but one day you will, when you look back and you see all the times you went and did something for someone, or you brought some project in and it meant that you had to neglect something in your home, some little detail that meant a lot to you, while you did something for someone else. And so here is a good question here, and that is, when someone is in sales, I'm just going to use sales because there's a lot of women that get into nutrition, and they get into some kind of other sale type thing. Or if they're not in sales, they're very sale type of activity when they want to do something social. And like I said, they will say things like, oh, I want to have a thing at my house, and can you come? And if you turn them down, they'll just pressure. And if you say, I can't, I really can't, I've got so much to do, well, I can come over and help you. And you don't want them to. Or they argue back, and they'll say, well, you could do it afterwards. And so you've got to be careful how much information you give anybody when you're trying to say no to something that they want you to do, because if you start giving them information, they will say, they will have an excuse for it, and so they'll start to argue. Now, one of the things that one of the ladies said to me is, if you have a business, let's say you have a lot of young women now are going into businesses because they want to be homemakers, they want to stay home, but they want to have some kind of other thing, so they don't have to say, I'm just a homemaker. I'm just, my husband provides for us, and I'm at home. And so they will get into something to sell. And so one thing that I've been calling all my friends and asking them about this, and one lady said, avoid home businesses that put pressure on you to put pressure on other people to buy it all. And she also had something really interesting that she said. She says, avoid businesses that use up your time and your wallet to use up other people's time and their wallet. And the pressure, and she asked me, how many times have you met someone that looked so good? You asked her, oh, what do you use on your hair? Your hair always looks so good. She says that's the best non-pressure sales you can get into, because if she has a product that she wants to sell, she needs to show the product and see how it works. And she said, if you see someone that's dressed really well, you can't help but ask, where did you get that? Where'd you get that lovely jacket? And I was telling her about a friend of mine that was talking to me about an old movie, and she was talking about the kindness of some of these people that were portrayed in this old movie. So I said, now what's the name of that movie? And I wanted to write it down, and so she sold it to me. I mean, the lady that had the pretty hair, she sold the product without pressure, because people were sold on the fact that it was worthy and that it worked and they could see it. And so another thing is one of the problems with the sales attitude, especially in the home, is that the homemaker is never free from it, because I don't know about you, but as I have grown more vital, I don't go out at night, and rarely in the afternoon, because I realize I'm losing time. And I'm losing time in the home and things that need to be done. Plus, it's not safe to go out at night. And yet there will be people that will plan things at night or want you to come to one of their, maybe they've gotten into some kind of business and they want you to come to one of their meetings at night, and you try to turn it down, and they've got cards that tell you, oh, if she says this, say this. And so they've got all this slick sales stuff coming up. And she said, one lady said to me, if you have to put pressure on people to buy something, you're not a good salesperson. But for example, let's say you want to be an etiquette teacher or a manners teacher for people or little children or whatever. The best sales pitch would be for you to be a polite person. Then somebody would say, how'd you learn to be so polite? I'd like to learn more about that. And if you want people to enjoy sewing clothes, wear your pretty clothes that you sew. And someone might say, I'd like to know more about sewing. You might not be wanting to be a teacher, but it's amazing how much people can sell by being the person that they want to be with the product, whether it's a good skin condition or something like that. Somebody will say, you have such nice skin. What do you use on your skin? And so these are just examples of how much a better, more refined, and I talked about refinement at the beginning of this video, a more refined salesperson is not pushy. Helen Andelin talked about it in The Fascinating Girl, that if you want to be refined, you are not pushy. You do not argue. You do not try to make people do things against their will, and then they get, if you make anybody buy something or commit to something and they're not really sold on it, then they'll resent you and they'll avoid you. And when people start avoiding you, maybe you have been too pushy. And so you want to be sure that you're careful not to, like for instance, when I began homeschooling, I enjoyed it so much, and we were just doing it for us. And people would find out about it and seek us out and ask us how to do it. I could have sold it if I knew what I was selling, because they would ask, because they liked our countenance, they liked our family interaction, and they liked how happy and relaxed our children, how untroubled our children were, and how polite too, And so if you have a good product, you have to live it, and you can't push it on other people. And there are, for the homemaker, there's always somebody that wants you to do something for them or get involved in something. It's kind of like a sales thing, and they will say, well, you could do it in your spare time or something like that. Now, here's another problem, is that for the homemaker, she's going to have to learn to refuse something in a refined way. We want to talk about refinement. And it's not very refined to be pushy, but also the homemaker has to learn to turn down things and refuse things in a polite way. And there are some ways to do this, but you have to be somewhat straight with it, because if you make up an excuse, they will figure out how to get around the excuse if they're pushy people. So you have to say, I'm not going to be doing that. And you get your list out and you say, okay, well, on those nights are all committed. I've got all those nights committed. And there are some people that won't take no for an answer. We have a lot of vital women around here, and sometimes they get so tired of being pressured to go to something at night, even a church thing. They don't go out at night. They don't leave their husbands. They don't go out at night. Nighttime is a time to, settle down and read a book and get ready to retire for the evening. And they don't want to do that. And so, but some people will think that if you're a homemaker, you don't have anything else to do. You don't have to worry about getting up the next day. So you can go out and go to one of their activities, their sales meetings, whatever. And I think probably the best thing to do is to say, you might as well not ask me to go anywhere after 7 o'clock in the evening, because I just do not do that. It's not good for my safety or my health. And I also have other commitments. That's the time which I talk to my children or my grandchildren. And how many times when you were younger did some of you who are now vital get kind of called away in the evening to go meet one of your friends for coffee or something like that, and then you look back on it years later and say, I missed some moments in my children's lives or my family's lives that I could have done something for them. And for everyone that has demand on you, they also have people that can help them. They're not dependent on you. And so it's really important, I think, to be refined and not be pushy. A lot of this pushiness, even with people that aren't in sales, that aren't trying to get you in sales or anything, they can become very, very pushy to the homemaker. Homemakers need to realize you need to take control of your own schedule and your own list. And one lady brought up the fact that she would go to church and she would see a list of activities that were available on a Saturday, and that there was one family that would go every Saturday to these activities. And so she felt this pressure when she got home, like, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. But she finally said, I have to take control of my own list, my own life. And just because it's there to do, it's for those who want to do it. You don't have to go and do things just because they're there, just because they're available. And if you think you're going to miss out, there'll be another way. I think of things and classes I wanted to go to when I was much younger. Well, now you can find all the books at half price or less that were required, in these courses. And you can find videos of how it was done, and you can find all this stuff for practically nothing. So I think that it's very important to preserve your time. I think time is one of probably the most important thing about being a homemaker, because you're not sitting around wasting time. You are managing your house, and even if you are sitting and having a cup of tea, you have your eye on everything. Your eyes are probably never still. You're just looking around and you're relaxing. And a lot of people, especially young single women, don't understand that role. They, in spite of the fact that maybe they one day want to get married, they don't quite understand the homemaker's role, and they look at her as somebody that isn't, quote, isn't doing anything or isn't making money. And so we have to show them a good example by being content at the home and doing our best at home and not getting ourselves committed to things. Now, there is this sales thing. You've heard of it, and it's called the right to refuse. And it's like within 24 hours, you can cancel something someone has sold you because you felt pressured or you changed your mind. Well, it's the same with the homemaker. And I think anything, you get somebody invites you to something, or they want you to do something for them, you should have the right to refuse. You should be able to say, I felt like that was a rather sudden decision. I'm trying to think what those words were that this lady said. Pressure, sudden pressure. And say that upon reflection, I have discovered that I cannot participate or I cannot go. And you have the right to refuse that too, even though it wasn't a sale. You have a right to say, I can't do that. I've already got all this other stuff on my list and I can't do that. One time, Mr. S had a little fun with this. There were so many church activities going on at one time in our lives that something had to give, because I was getting behind on the laundry. There was no groceries in the house, and the children were falling behind in their homeschool lessons, and we were just going to and everybody had something going on. And of course, I understand why they would want to do that, but there was an activity and I decided we wouldn't go. So I sent Mr. S and I said, just tell them that I can't go. And they asked him, well, where's your wife? And he said, well, she didn't. I explained to him, you know how men, they're so blunt, they have no tact. I explained to him, something's got to give. I've got no clean clothes. We can't function. I've got to get my life in order, and I can't go to this thing. And I've got to get my work done. I'm not getting my work done. And if you want to get into some clean clothes and have the bedroom cleaned up and the bathroom's all clean, I've got to stay home. So when he got there, that was the first question, was, where's your wife? And he said, she couldn't come because she didn't get her work done. So the way that came out, they were all looking at him like, what kind of a taskmaster are you? And he was just as happy as could be that he said that, and that they thought that, she couldn't come because she didn't get her work done. So you have to be awfully careful how you explain it to somebody. And I have come to the point where I don't give any information. I just say, I'm sorry, I'm unable to come, and I'll catch up with you later. You don't have to tell them everything you're doing. You don't even have to tell them how sick you are. You don't have to tell people anything if you can refuse. You have a right to refuse. And but the point is to be able to refuse with refinement, with kindness, and not like you're shooting somebody down, not like you're insulting anyone. So if you can think of ways to do that, that's very clever. Probably doing better than I am. So ladies, I hope you have a wonderful day and that you get a lot of things done, and that some of this might have been helpful to you. Thank you so much for coming, and I always wish I could come more often. We'll try to do that, but as you can see, I'm learning how I need to do more of those anti-procrastination exercises. So I'll talk to you later, and please stay close to Christ. Bye.